Hello, my name is Sandy Adomaitis, the social media director for the Page International Screenwriting Awards, and your host for the Writers Hangout, a podcast that celebrates the many stages of writing, from inspiration to the first draft, revising, getting a project made, and everything in between. We'll talk to the best and the brightest in the entertainment industry and create a space where you can hang out, learn from the pros, and have fun.
It's another gorgeous day here in Los Angeles, and I want to thank everyone for joining us here at the Writers Hangout. Today, our guests of honor are Mark Steen and Steve Mazur. Steve wrote the Jim Carrey box office hit, Liar Liar, and family favorite, The Little Rascals. Mark, a Groundlings alumnus, wrote and produced The Secret Diaries of Desmond Pfeiffer, Aaahh, Real Monsters, and Dilbert. Together, Mark and Steve teach a class at UCLA entitled Writing Funnier and Better Using Improv Comedy Techniques. And that's what we're going to focus on today, how improv can make you a better writer. Let's get started. Hi, I'd like to welcome to the Writers Hangout Steve Mazur and Mark Steen, two talented writers. And the last time I checked, you guys were good friends?
Yes.
Yes, for the purposes of the recording, good. Yes.
I'm so happy to have you here today. Both of you trained and performed in improv, and that's what I want to focus on today. You're both successful in your writing, but you also teach improv separately and together. For the writers out there that don't really know, what is improv? Mark, do you want to take that?
Improv is really just taking an idea or a premise, building a scene around. It's flying by the seat of your pants.
Yeah, right. It's improv comedy has become a popular form of performance. Nothing is planned in advance. No dialogue is written, etc. And it tends to be pretty entertaining, as it turns out.
Yeah. But if I'm a writer and not an actor, what can an improv class teach me?
Certainly when you sit down to write a scene, there are certain elements that you that you have to have before you can write a successful scene. And once you sort of learn the importance of those particular elements through doing improv and to utilize those particular elements, that can certainly help you in not only understanding what a scene is, and specifically a comedic scene, the importance of them.
In a broader context, Mark and I, for a number of years now, have been teaching a course called Improv for Writers. And the notion is, I don't know if you've ever noticed this, Sandy, but writers tend to be sort of negative and self-critical.
No.
And very hard on themselves.
Yeah.
And improv, part of doing improv is it teaches you a positive approach to creativity, where you sort of cut yourself a break. You're not so self-critical. You let yourself experiment, figure things out on the fly. And so we found that the approach that one takes to learning improv and performing improv also translate to writing screenplays in terms of the process. Again, all writers are afraid of that blank page. Improv teaches you, don't worry about the blank page. Just dive in. It doesn't need to be perfect. You can make it better later. If you start exploring an idea and you go off track, not to worry. Very easy to get back on track, either later when you rewrite the draft, etc. But all the time you're sort of open to the discovery that the process empowers. And so in a way, the improv courses are a form of mental health training for writers, really. Just to adapt this sort of a positive approach to the craft.
That is such a nice way and healthy and just a good way to look at the blank page. Because you're right, every writer is challenged by that blank page, and to know that it doesn't have to be perfect.
Right, and when you're writing in solitude, you're dealing with your own ideas. And because you're dealing with your own ideas, you tend to become solidified in them and you believe in them. But when you are constantly having to work with other people, you start to learn that there are sometimes an infinite number of ways to deal with whatever you're, doing a scene or whatever you're writing about. And I think it's been our experience dealing with writers in comedy that have a background in improv that, if you need something changed, if you need something different, if you need something, they're more sort of adept at doing that than someone who's been works alone.
Great. So take me through a basic improv class. What happens? Do you have to be funny to take an improv class?
One thing that's interesting about improv is in a 3-hour class, you can be taught all the rules of improv. It's actually quite simple and basic. The difficulty is putting those rules in practice, and that's just a function of doing, scenes and working with other performers in improv. So for our classes, they're all workshops. We'll be going over the rules. Then we kind of open it up and start playing improv games. They're fun. And through each game, we're sort of starting with the most basic games and working our way up. And then over the course of the course, as the weeks progress, we'll start being more, giving more notes after scenes, guiding scenes a bit more, talking with students about a variety of choices that they might have made, etc. But really, it's kind of like improv is a thing you can just dive right in, right?
And no experience, nothing. You can just...
Right. You can dive in. Improv performers tend to be extremely collaborative. It's a very positive atmosphere as a rule. So even if you don't really know what you're doing, you can still kind of get started, get your feet wet. And then gradually over time, you get more and more comfortable with it.
And if you're a writer, you don't have to be funny, because you start to, in fact, when we usually start with beginning students, we encourage them not to be funny. And lots of time that's difficult to do. And the reason we do that is because it's the same thing when you're writing a scene, a comedic scene, is you want the comedy to fit into your scene. You want to make sure that it's inherent, it's organic. And if you try to be funny, lots of times it comes at the expense of that. When Steve and I teach improv, we make sure that they understand the structure of a comedic scene. So what makes it work? What's sort of the template that can make a scene work? And then you sort of add the comedy onto that, rather than having comedy be at the forefront and trying to make all the pieces of the puzzle fit into that comedy. And scenes tend to not work as well.
Tina Fey, who is one of the great writers working today, as well as a great improviser from Second City in Chicago, she says, Mark, you remember the quote better than me. What are the 2 keys to improv?
Yeah, that was actually Kristin Wig, I think. She said, improv is all about, I'm trying to remember now. It's all about, this is embarrassing, I can't remember. It's all about not being funny and
listening.
And listening. Yeah, that's it. It's all about listening and not being funny. And as you can see,
I'm sorry, could you repeat that? I wasn't listening.
Yes,
oh,
exactly.
I'm joking.
Isn't that interesting that she's saying, sorry, I apologize for mixing up Kristin Wig and Tina Fey, but what she's saying is really interesting, because a key to being funny and doing improv is not to try to be funny. That's one of her 2 main rules. And I also think, we see that in screenwriting as well, where people are forcing the comedy or, breaking, say, the reality of a character in order to reach for comedy. And that's always a bad idea. So improv helps you learn these sort of positive habits in terms of creating scenes and in terms of creating characters.
I love it when the joke comes from the character as opposed to the setup. And I mean, I do appreciate, a good pratfall or, just some kind of obvious on the nose joke. But when a character says a straight line and I'm laughing, it's my favorite comedy.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. And if a line or we always hate to say line because you don't want to just focus on dialogue, but if something is funny within the context of a scene only, that's when it really works. Now,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Where if it's just standing on its own, it's, it would work anywhere. But when it's really inherent and rises out of that particular scene with those characters, that's what gets a really, sort of, for lack of a better term, a deeper laugh from someone watching it.
Do you have a favorite exercise for like beginners? What is a basic?
Well, with folks just beginning, everybody does the same game, which is called yes and. And basically, it's getting in the habit of the two steps of being in an improv scene, collaborating in a scene with another performer. Yes is just meaning I accept the reality that we're creating. Yes, I'm in the zoo. And then and tells you add a bit more information on what you already have. And if two performers in a scene together both follow that rule, it's going to work out. It's going to be a scene. But what's super interesting is innate within us is our impulse is to say no. That's our default, right? And so it's very interesting with folks who are beginning to just get out of the habit of either saying, instead of saying yes and to whatever's going on, there's a tendency to say no or but. No, deny the information, or but, I'm going to change the information. So it's very interesting. And that's part of the deal because, especially performers and writers, we often come out of this place of fear, right? And so no or but are ways of defending ourselves or defending our ideas or preventing us from getting into an uncomfortable place. And instead, what we want to do as creative people is we want to embrace the unknown, right? So we want to say yes to scene ideas. We want to say and add information. So we're always building, progressing, moving forward.
It's kind of when you say yes, then your mind is free for the ideas to flow. But if you say no, you start thinking and freezing. And then you've also left that other person on stage almost saying, I didn't like your idea. Your idea sucks. So we're not at a zoo. We're in a bar.
Right.
And
I think one of the reasons we say no is because it's not our idea. We like our ideas, especially in comedy, because we all have our own sense of what comedy is. If the idea is coming from someone else and you sort of learn what improv does, it sort of forces you to say, yes, okay, let's go with that. So it's kind of, you have to make this sort of mental shift into just sort of embracingly love all the information that comes your way, despite what you may think of it internally. And that's, right. That's just a healthy exercise in, not only in improv, but it's a healthy exercise we can implement in a lot of our lives.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
No closes off progress, basically.
Mm-hmm.
So, of course, at the very beginning, if you're just starting out, we actually encourage folks to say the words yes and, very quickly, you no longer have to say those words, right? But you're in the mind frame of accepting the ideas of other people, and you're in the mind frame of always adding on to scenes, progressing on what you've already built.
I'm just going to switch it up a little bit. I've already written my script. It needs work. And someone says, take an improv class. Well, what's that going to do for my script that's already written?
Way that it helps is by helping you develop a positive process to writing. I think folks who have never written are very fearful of rewriting. You know, they think, well, I'm going to write a first draft of this script and then I'm going to be done. I'll be ready to send it out. What they don't recognize is two things. One is that the old cliche, writing is rewriting. In other words, everything you see on television, everything you see in the movie has been reworked, rewritten, often dozens of times before it ever reaches the screen, right? Number two, this thing that we fear, which is like, oh, what a slog. I have to rewrite my own material again and again and again. I think most professional writers find that part of the process to be very satisfying, and often the most satisfying part of the process. Writers ultimately enjoy rewriting because they're getting things better. They're improving. The script is always moving forward and progressing. And so improv, again, will give you this sense of one that you'll be open to change. You'll be recognizing, hey, I don't need to be locked down to this idea or that idea. What other ideas might even be better? And two is that, you know, once you give up that fear, you're approaching that rewrite with this more positive attitude. And again, only good things come out of that frame of mind.
Right. I really like that, giving up the fear and just thinking, what other ideas? I like that.
Well, Steve always talks too about, which I think is very helpful, about just not being so hard on yourself in your first draft. Just keep it moving forward. Just go. Just don't stop. Yes. Don't go back.
Sidebar. When you're writing, do you go back over the first stuff, the things you did yesterday, or do you like to just push ahead? I mean, it's probably different in circumstances, but just wondering.
Well, if I'm writing a screenplay, I might just, to hit the ground running, I might just look over the few pages that I did before, the scene preceding where I'm starting, just to get a running start in a way. Mm-hmm. But that said, a big piece of advice that I have for people is, you have your outline, you start writing. One, be open to changing your outline as you write, but don't go backward in that draft. In other words, let's say I have a buddy comedy and I decide on page 25, I'm going to eliminate one of the two leads. Our impulse is to go back to page 1 and start rewriting that with only the one lead. Don't do that. Just continue from page 25 on as if you've made that change, right?
Oh, that's a good tip.
Yes.
Because as you continue writing, you're going to come up with other ideas, other notions, other changes you're going to want to make. And again, it's better off to keep going, keep learning things. Writing that first draft is more a dialogue than a monologue, right? Because while you're putting down words in your script is also communicating with you. It's kind of telling you, hey, this works better than that, or this seems to be a more fun story to tell. So you're adjusting as you're progressing. You got to be open to that. Mm-hmm. And then once you finish that draft with whatever changes occur to you, that's the time to go back to page 1 and then incorporate the various changes that you decided. The opposite of that, and I think what happens to a lot of aspiring writers, they write 20 pages, then they lose their confidence. They go back to page 1. Then they work their way up. Now they're on page 30. They lose their confidence. They go back to page 1. And so what writers end up with is a very polished half a script, right?
Yeah.
And instead, finish that script, again, being open to changes as you progress. And then at the end of that, you're going to go back. You're going to be much better shape, much more knowledge about your world and your characters. and then tackle that second draft.
We all know what we want the first 10 minutes of our movie to look like. We have the opening shot, we have the credit sequence, we have the music we want chosen, and we kind of just recycle that. Stays in our head for often many years, and we got that down perfect. But you've got to, when you move forward, then you start massaging what the new stuff, but you got to get the new stuff down first. You've been mulling over the first 10 minutes for a while. And again, like improv, it forces you to move forward. And as long as there's movement, you'll find ideas. It's the same thing with a blank piece of paper. If you're just staring at a blank piece of paper and you think, oh, I have this idea, then no, yes, this idea, or you type a sentence, no, you throw that away, whatever. If you just say, I'm just going to write, I'm just going to keep writing. And then the idea might come from the action of just moving forward. You may get the idea by what you're writing on page 2 or 3, if just let it flow out. But if you're just sort of in that one point where you're just either rejecting or accepting an idea piece by piece by piece by piece, it can be overwhelming.
Right. Besides learning how to become a better storyteller through improv, what other benefits would you say for writers to take an improv class?
Well, we covered, Mark covered it earlier in some ways. One is you become a better collaborator. You become a more positive presence in the writing room. You're more flexible to work with the ideas of other people. And in, movies and in TV, it's extremely collaborative. You're working with lots of different people with lots of different points of view. So working on those skills of collaboration and flexibility are great. Also, it gives comedy writers, in particular, confidence in their abilities. They recognize, oh yeah, I don't have to reach for the joke all the time. I can find the comedy in any given situation, basically. So it's helping build up that confidence in your comedy chops. Also for pitching, it's good because when we have to pitch ideas or try to, get a job interview or something like that, it helps you think on your feet, helps you present yourself with more confidence.
Oh, right.
It's very positive for writers in a lot of different ways.
Yeah, that is really cool. You don't want to give away your ideas. When you're pitching, you don't want to just turn your pitch around. But you're right. If an executive throws in something, you won't stumble. It won't make you just fall apart.
You won't shut down.
You won't shut down. Yes.
And also from just a practical point of view, especially true in comedy, if it's a great way to network because comedy, you're working with other comedy writers. You get when people will start getting work, and they will know you. They will know your personality, and we've had just numerous friends all sort of help each other out,
right?
Because they know it. They're not even helping each other out; they just know each other. Mm-hmm. So when they say, "Hey, we need somebody for someone to go," I know this person, because they've been around them. They know that they're funny. They know what they're like. So it's a good way to sort of get into that circle of comedians, writers, comedy writers.
Yeah, you might find a friend or your future
or
writing
you can find a friend. You might even fall in love.
This is true. Well, thank you guys so much for that. That's really going to be helpful to a lot of people, a lot of writers. Before we go, do you want to do a pop quiz?
Okay,
Let's
sure.
go.
Okay. This is something I call you love the movie, but do you know the movie?
All right.
And I'm going to quiz you both. Now, Mark Steen, it might be a little tougher for you because you've going to get a quiz on a whole franchise. James Bond. James Bond.
All right. Oh, very good.
And I happen to know Steve's favorite comedy movie is Big. So his quiz is going to be questions about Big.
Okay, bring it on.
Okay. We're going to go Mark first. What was the first James Bond movie?
First James Bond movie, Dr. No, 1960, either 1 or 2, I think. 62.
I didn't even have the year. Yay, that is correct. Steve, questions about the movie Big. After Josh's wish is granted by Zoltar, what does he notice about the machine?
It is not plugged in.
Yes.
Impressed.
Mark Steen.
Yes.
What is the name of Bond's ancestral home?
Skyfall.
Yes. Steve Mazur. What was the name of the girl in Josh's class that he liked?
Oh my God. Oh, I can't remember.
Cynthia.
What's that?
Cynthia.
Julia.
No.
Cynthia Benson.
Cynthia. All right. I'm sorry.
It's
All right.
okay.
Mark is ahead of me.
Very disappointing. All right.
Very disappointed. Okay. Mark, questions about James Bond.
Mm-hmm.
In The Living Daylights, Bond sleds down a mountain on blank.
A
Bond.
open cello case.
Yes. Okay. Steve, time for you to catch up.
I'm embarrassed that I know all of this, but yeah, okay.
Who directed Big?
It was Laverne. Penny Marshall.
Yes. I would have accepted Laverne.
Okay.
Mark Steen.
Yeah.
Who is the oldest actor to have portrayed 007? Do you need any of the names?
I'm going to say, would it be David Niven? Or are you talking
Roger Moore?
within the franchise, within sort of the franchise?
Oh, yeah, I already gave you the answer. Roger Moore.
Was it right? Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah.
See what Mark is saying. Believe it or not, David Niven played James Bond in the movie, and so did Woody Allen.
Well, yeah, Woody was Jimmy Bond, actually. Yes.
Oh, okay.
But that's the Casino Royale that they did back in like 67, which had 5 directors, by the way, on it.
Really?
Yes.
That's a whole podcast in itself.
I know,
What happened
five
there?
directors. I remember John Huston was one of them, but yeah, had Woody Allen in it and Peter Sellers, David Niven, and a great soundtrack, by the way. If you ever want to get a great soundtrack, get that soundtrack.
Cool. We'll Google it. Where to find it. Steve Mazur. Why wasn't Josh allowed on the ride at the amusement park?
He was too short.
Yes. He was too small. Okay, Mark Steen.
Yes.
What is James Bond's father's first name?
Andrew.
Yes. Mazur. What is the name of Josh's best friend who knows about the transformation?
Oh my God. You're killing me. So I'm not so good at names. I can't remember.
Billy.
Billy. All right.
Okay.
Mark, did you know that?
I did not.
Okay.
Okay. Mark Steen.
Mm-hmm.
In Dr. No, M refers to the British Secret Service as what?
M6?
Close.
M16.
M17, sorry.
M17. Oh.
M17.
Oh,
I'm embarrassed for you, Mark.
oh my God.
Mazur, how much was Josh's first paycheck?
I think it was like $185.
It was $187. Mark, do you want to give this one to Steve? Because that was pretty good.
Yes.
Okay. Mark Steen
Oh,
is the winner.
all right.
Well,
So,
thank you so much, guys, for this. I really, really enjoyed our time together. Improv. If you're a writer, get out there and take a class.
Absolutely. And it's a lot of fun. I mean, so even just on that basis alone, it's a good idea to try it out.
Yep. And if it makes you uncomfortable, you're probably going to benefit from it the most.
Good point. Well, thank you guys. And again, thanks for being on the show.
That's a wrap for the Writers Hangout. Thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe, like, and thrive. Till we get to hang out again, keep writing. The world needs your stories. The Writers Hangout is sponsored by the Page International Screenwriting Awards. Executive producer, Kristin Overn. Producers, Terry Sampson and Sandy Adomaitis. Music by Ethan Stoller.